Hello guys, this is Net Buzz, where we give you popular stuff on the net. Today we're going to be talking about what you need to know before eating Quaker Oats. Very important, so stay tuned. Please do subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified when we do post up videos. Smash that like button and share and comment as well. Let's get into this video. So let's get into this. How many times have you started your day with a piping hot bowl of Quaker oatmeal? Or how about Life cereal? There's nothing like the comforting taste of nostalgia first thing in the morning, right? Quaker Oats and their family of products have been a part of our everyday life for decades. In fact, chances are pretty good that you'll probably have one of those distinctive round cartons in your cupboard right now. Maybe even a few empty ones tucked into a closet for a future craft project. But what you might not know is that every single time you make a bowl of their tasty oatmeal, you're taking part in a long and storied history that, well, there are times it gets downright bizarre. Believe it or not, there's nothing bland about Quaker Oats or where they came from. Here is the untold truth of an old school breakfast favourite. There's something undeniably wholesome about Quaker Oats. Maybe it's just that you've probably always had a canister in the cupboard, or might have something to do with the fact that it's the perfect breakfast for cold winter mornings. It's comfort food to the max, and that might have to do with the smiling, friendly-looking man on the logo. You can just see him serving up a piping hot bowl of oatmeal to his kids, and he's about as far as from Tony the Tiger as you can get. But who is he? There's a long-standing belief that he's the founder of Pennsylvania William Penn. It's possible, US history says, Penn became a Quaker when he was 22, but according to Quaker Oats law, it's not him. They say that he's not an actual person, but that he was chosen as a representative of the Quakers. Why the Quakers? Because they embody the same values Quaker Oats wants to be associated with: honesty, integrity, purity, and strength. He does have a name though, and according to the Wall Street Journal, company insiders call him Larry. So there you have it. While some company mascots are very real, like Duncan Hines, Larry can continue to exist just as the perfect ideal of the Quaker faith. The Quaker Oats man has changed quite a bit over the years. Larry, the Quaker Oats man, was first developed in 1877, and according to Business Insider's walks down memory lane, he had a surprising number of looks over the years. The familiar logo, just the Quaker man's head, didn't show up until 1956, and for a short time he was black and white. He got a colour treatment in 1957, and if the iconic drawing looks like a little familiar, there's a good reason for that. It was done by Haddon Sundblom, who also did the Santa Claus illustrations for Coca-Cola. He got a complete overhaul in the 1970s to a blue and white logo that frankly is very 70s. This look didn't last long, but it was only in 2007 that we got the logo you're familiar with today, for the most part. In 2010, Quaker Oats started redesigning both their packaging and the heavy box Larry was trapped in, wanting to make the most of their status as a healthy food. And in 2012, Larry himself got a makeover. Did you notice, according to the design firm's Michael Connors, we took about £5 off him. Quaker Oats was essentially selling horse food and marketing it for people. Quaker Oats was trademarked in 1877, and the next 2 decades saw 3 competing oat milling companies come together to form a single conglomerate. After years of infighting, Quaker Oats was finally formed in 1901. It was an incredible thing because the entire industry was truly built on their founders' ability to convince the public that they should be eating livestock feed. Ferdinand Schumacher was one of those founders, and he immigrated to the United States from Germany in 1851. Back in his native country and most of Europe, everyone was familiar with the idea of eating oats and porridge. When he came to the US, he found oats were feed for horses, and people certainly didn't want to eat that. Schumacher got creative and started selling glass jars packed with cubed oats. The convenience factor got people interested, and Schumacher went on to figure out a way to make them cook faster. He created rolled oats, and this was about the time the Civil War was kicking off, and the military needed a cheap way to feed a lot of people, and soldiers across the country were introduced to the idea that they could eat their horses oats. From the very start, Quaker Oats has been built by its marketing, perhaps more so than most companies. Not only did they have to convince people to eat oats in the first place, but they had to get them to prepare it in a way that would taste good and keep them coming back. Those challenges got Henry Crowell, one of the original founders of Quaker Oats, thinking. He decided on packaging his oats in these round, colourful containers. We still do today. They got people noticing the oats but making them. It's hard to know if Quaker Oats knew what a revolutionary idea they had when they printed a recipe right on the box, We see it all the time now, thanks to their 1891 idea. That was about the same time they introduced two more brilliant marketing techniques too, the trial size sample and the prize in the box. In 1891, consumers could find a piece of china dishware in their oat boxes, and while that's quite a little bit different from the toys we usually expect in today's cereal, they can take credit for this idea too. And next up, Quaker Oats once fed kids a radioactive oatmeal to see what would happen. In 1949, boys living at the Fernald State School, a state-run school for abandoned boys, were invited to join the science club. According to the Smithsonian, they were given all kinds of incentives to join, like hearty breakfast, starvation was frequent punishment, and trips to baseball games, but there was a catch. Quaker Oats had teamed up with researchers from MIT for free experiments involving 74 boys between the ages of 10 and 17. For one, the boys were given breakfast of Quaker Oats that contained radioactive calcium and iron. The reasoning was twofold. Researchers wanted to know what kind of effects radioactivity had on the human body, as more people were being exposed to it than ever before. Quaker Oats wanted in on the study because they saw it as a way to prove their oatmeal was just as healthy as their cream of wheat competitors. They got their medical testing done, MIT got their results, it was a win-win. Sort of a 1995 lawsuit found out that while the radioactivity hadn't been enough to cause lasting damage, the boys involved were entitled to a settlement and an apology. In 2018, the Environmental Working Group, the same group that releases the Dirty Dozen list, tested multiple breakfast foods for the presence of glyphosate, that stuff found in weed killer and specifically in Roundup. When they released their results, they said that among the foods that tested positive for the chemical were Quaker Oats. Other breakfast foods were also found to contain the weed killer chemical like Cheerios and Lucky Charms. In fact, 31 of the 45 samples of oats tested were deemed to be below their safety criteria. And when they went back and tested more samples of both Quaker Oats and Cheerios, they found out that all but 2 of 28 samples were deemed harmful. But are they? There's a heated debate going on in the scientific community about just how dangerous glyphosate is. Some, like the World Health Organization's International Programme on Chemical Safety, say it's not a concern at all. On the other hand, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer says it's possibly carcinogenic, so clearly more research needs to be done. A week prior to the results going public, a California judge ruled in favor of a man who claimed repeated exposure to Roundup caused his terminal cancer. That's not good publicity, and Fast Company says Quaker Oats did respond to the findings with the partial statement, any levels of glyphosate that may remain are significantly below any regulatory limits and are safe for human consumption. Next up, Quaker Oats financed Willy Wonka, the Chocolate Factory. Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is one of those iconic movies of any childhood. Even if it did give you nightmares, according to Brian Cronin, you can thank Quaker Oats for getting the movie made and for giving you those bad dreams. Let's start with the title. Ever wonder why it's not Charlie and the Chocolate Factory like the book? It's because Quaker Oats wanted to make sure the name Willy Wonka was front and centre so they could market the heck out of it. The movie was originally pitched as a pretty sweet deal for Quaker Oats. They would finance the movie, a major film studio would release it, and then they would create their own candies based on ones in the film. And that's exactly what happened. The Willy Wonka line of candy was launched alongside the movie, but there were difficulties. They couldn't come up with the perfect Wonka bar, and only peanut butter, Oompas and Super Scrunch bars were released in time. Wonka bars came a few years later, and Quaker Oats sold that division to Nestle in 1988. When you think of Quaker Oats, you think of oats and their cereal products, right? According to Marketing Lens, though, they've always dabbled in other products like pet food and even clothing. When they bought Snapple in 1994, the acquisition made them the third largest beverage company on the continent, behind Coca-Cola and PepsiCo. The partnership didn't last, and the LA Times called it one of the worst flops in corporate merger history. Quaker Oats only owned Snapple for 27 months, selling it for $300 million after making a $1.7 billion investment in the drinks company. There's an almost infinite number of factors that came into play in an acquisition like this, but the LA Times blamed the disastrous merger on the company's failure to understand Snapple's strengths, along with stiff competition from the other beverage distributors. And finally, Quaker Oats partnered with the FDA to get their oatmeal special labels. Oatmeal has come a long way as far as a reputation is concerned. It's the breakfast food of the health-conscious today, and that's in large part due to some official FDA claims Quaker Oats made possible for everyone. Prior to 1997, foods weren't allowed to advertise claims about specific benefits. They could say they were low-fat, for example, but they couldn't say they helped manage cholesterol. That changed after Quaker Oats reached out to the FDA and requested permission to advertise the fact that including oats in a balanced low-fat diet would help reduce the risk of heart disease, according to CNN. The move changed the way we advertise the health claims on food, and the change came in spite of protests from some groups claiming consumers would be misled into thinking certain foods were magic foods. The FDA acknowledged that in their official rules and regulations, stating that just wasn't the case, and by 1999 the Chicago Tribune was reporting Quaker Oats was seeing record sales. Thanks a lot for watching. This is NetBuzz, where we provide you with popular stuff on the net. Please do subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified when we post up videos, and give the like button a quick smash as well. This video is actually quite important to help people, because you need to think twice before you consume certain products, and if you are concerned about some of the things in this video that have been mentioned, then you can use user discretion as to whether or not you want to actually purchase and consume Quaker Oats again. Thank you for watching.